So we're back again. Mr. John McAdory actually gave us so much information that we're going to divide this into two parts. He shares how he navigated his career, and he gives you so many great tips on how to navigate your career. And really, he talks about a lot of career development strategies that, I teach to my coaching clients. Part 2, my interview with Mr. John McAdory. Check it out. But a lot of people, they want to know, okay, I love being a CRA, but I don't want to travel at this pace forever.
Right.
So where did you go from Amgen? Was that your last CRA role?
Yeah, so kind of. So it was, so at Amgen, that's when I decided I want to be a project manager.
Okay.
And moving into project management. So I had even started going down that path there. And so, in talking with my manager, and so this is also something I wanted to make sure is, I think a lot of times, especially as people of color, that we're afraid to ask or disclose to people above us what it is we want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm encouraging, and me as a manager and me as as a VP, like I encourage that because it helps me help you. Like I understand that, especially in today's job market, like people being places for 10, 15 years, that's just not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And because it hasn't been the case for me, hasn't been the case for a lot of people I've been working with, a lot of the people I've met during the course of the industry. But I can't help you get to where you want to go unless you tell me. So a lot of times when I'm hiring people or doing reviews with people or things like that, I'm like, what's your next step? Like you have a choice. Like you can continue to do this, or you can do this, or do you want exposure to X? So that's what I did at Amgen. I decided I want to be a project manager. So I talked to my manager. I'm still active as a CRA. So I know like this is a big career change path. She's going to lose me on the CRA team, all these things. But I told her like, I want to be a project manager. What do I need to do in order to become a project manager? I think I even a step above that. I was like, I want to be a director of operations. So that's what I told her I wanted to do. I was like, I want to be a director. I was like, these jobs keep coming up and I need to get to here in order to get to here. Like, what do I need to do in order to do that? And so, and she was open to the discussion. I think a lot of times people are scared to ask what their intent is in terms of where they want to go, because they, in some cases is valid. Like if I am an insecure manager, right, where I can be threatened a lot, or, like I want to keep a certain monitoring control over my group, asking that question can be hard.
Right.
But then you need to find someone how to be able to ask that. But like I was asking those questions. And so I would ask like, this is where I want to be. And so like, and a lot of too was I presented myself as this is where I want to get to. Even one of my friends, he used to tease me. He's a black monitor in Atlanta. He was like, just watch out. John's going to own and run one of these things, before it's all said and done. But because like we had these discussions about where I wanted to go and where I wanted to be. And so I had those discussions with her in terms of I want to become a project manager and I want to become a director. Like, how do I get to the director level? And because I was a senior CRA and, how do I get those? And so a couple of things she told me was she was helping me on the path. So she was going to expose me over into, she asked, well, first thing was we willing to move to California? Because a lot of the PM positions were in-house. And that was one of the first things I learned was moving into project management like around 2009, 2010. A lot of the positions were actually physically sit at the desk in the building versus working remotely at home.
Yeah.
And the second was, she was like, if you want to get into the director level, especially at Amgen or some of the larger biotechs, they look for people with master's degrees. And so then I was like, well, okay. So then I knew information. I knew things that I could make decisions on how I wanted to manage my career path. So that's when I went and got my master's and then going to UNC to get my master's because of the conversation I had with her. If I had never asked to have that conversation, I always thought I would get an advanced degree, but it would never became like an imperative for this now in order for me to move, to start accelerating my career.
Right.
So and I know you have one, Jasmine, a lot of people starting to move up at this level are starting to get master's degrees, because that becomes a defining differentiation. If you're really great at what you do and you're one of those top 5%, then you may not need it. But in general, it doesn't hurt, because people are going to start looking for those as you start traversing into the. And so, but the main thing at Amgen was they created an environment where you could ask. They had skip, and another thing was like they had skip level meetings, which means once a month, I would meet with my manager's manager, which meant because a lot of times, like if you talk to your manager and you're not getting anywhere, but you're like, but I wish I could talk to her boss. And so like that also gave me exposure to higher management as well. And so because they promoted a culture that modeled itself to where you can actually speak to people who at the executive level. And so so that ends up being important, because then you can get even more information. Like the game is how much information can you get, because people aren't going to readily share information. But the question is, how can I get all this information and be able to make a decision with the requisite information you need to make the decision and career path you want to go. But yeah, so with Amgen, that was set. So I was off that set. I told my wife, I was like, we're maybe moving to California, to Thousand Oaks. I was like, this is where I want to go. Amgen is the best company. All these things are great. And then their product failed. Well, not failed, but the FDA did a labeling change. And so they went from having this is going to sound crazy because it's still a lot of money. They went from having like a $2 billion product to having $1 billion product or $900 million product, which means their revenues got cut in half someone signing a piece of paper, their revenues got cut in half. And so for them, they start, and this is one of the things I dislike most about business, is when your revenue gets cut, they start looking at expenses. Yeah. And the first expense they always look at is human capital. Right. They decide like, okay, how can I continue to support my stock price? Oh, well, we'll move all of clinical research and take this 3,000 people or not that many because Amgen's not that big, but we'll take this group of people and we'll move it. We'll outsource it all to a CRO and which was Quintiles. And that's going to save the company $300 million. So instead of taking a $900 million loss, they end up saving $300 million, which makes their stock drop, not feel the same to the shareholders on the market. Right. And again, companies need to make decisions based on shareholders, based on company needs, the viability of the company, success, things like there. But, everything always falling back. And this is just not exclusive to pharma, but just in business in general, a lot of times when companies take hit in order to ensure, their fiduciary responsibility to like shareholders and things like that, a lot of times it's the human capital that ends up taking a hit. And so like, that's just one of the unfortunate things about business is that, that's just the nature of what we are and where we are. And going back to your question earlier about like jumping around, moving around, like if you understand that, like you're a cog in a wheel, which is not a great feeling, but like if something happens to the business, like the first place they look at our expenses and they say like, okay, well, can we downsize our staff and let X many people go, which will support X revenue, which, the different things that people look at. So with Amgen, they ended up outsourcing everybody. So I did not want to go back to a CRO. And so I started looking for project management jobs. And so I found one in Atlanta, the company was UCB. I ended up getting a associate project manager position with them. And, and it was in Atlanta, so it was close to the house, close to where I live. So I was able to, I was going in, which was different. And it was, the transition was very difficult. If you've gone from working remotely to going in-house, like that's a very strong change. Sure. If you work from home well, you work a lot more efficiently at home than you do within an office.
Yeah. Because you're not being
interruptions. Don't have interruptions and things like that. So I was finishing work like 2 hours early, but you can't leave. And so you're sitting here at your desk because you're 9 to 5, you're sitting at the desk, you're like, let me find another, like, I need to find another project to do
Right.
because
And
like I've knocked out my work.
Was the traffic bad in Atlanta at that time? Or was it still kind of decent?
Atlanta traffic has always been bad, but it was markedly better than it is now.
Okay.
Like Atlanta traffic now is
it's awful. It's awful. Every time when I go home, it's like it might take you like an hour just to go like 5 miles, depending on where you are.
There's like it was bad, but like now I don't. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Like when we go back, like I remember I went back before the pandemic, and like I was trying to get from like Dunwoody to Perimeter, and I looked at my phone, and everything was red. Like all the highways, everything was red. Like, and some of it was like the dark red. Like everything. Like there was no green spots on any highway in Atlanta, and you're just like, this is Atlanta. It was like, and it was like 11 o'clock in the morning, and it was like,
it's always like that.
Everything was red. I was like, this is.
And that's one of the things you have to think about when it comes to monitoring. People think like, oh, the traveling is fun. But some of the cities you go to, like Atlanta, the traffic is awful. So you have to factor that into traveling to the site, traveling to the airport. And then the sites, like I had a site in Port Gibson, Mississippi, which I actually loved, by the way, even though it was in the middle of nowhere. But it took me like almost 2 hours to get from the airport to the site. Mm-hmm. So, you might have to fly and then still get in the car and drive another hour or two. And people don't think about that.
No, and that's not bringing up a good point, because like you can end up in places you never believed you would end up. Like, like you're in small towns and in Mississippi and Alabama and things like that. And you're like, so you land and you're just like, oh yeah, they give you a city and you type the city in and you're like, there's no, like, where's the closest airport? And you're like trying to find the airport. You're like, oh, like, so like it changes like a lot of times, like when you get seasoned at doing this, like you're trying to be like, I want to leave. I want to see, like, can I do this in a day? Like I'll leave. I'll wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'll get on a 6 o'clock flight. I'll land somewhere at 8. I'll drive to the site, work from 9 till 6, and find like a 10 o'clock flight to fly back.
Right.
And see if you can pack it all in a 24-hour period. And then the next day you're home and you don't have to spend overnight and do anything with that. But then so your mindset, that's always the thing you're looking at. But then you end up finding for Gibson, you're like, oh, like I'm going to be here for 3 days.
It's impossible. Yeah.
So like I need to come in the day before. I'm going to monitor. I'm going to see. And then the next day I'm going to catch a flight back home. It's like, oh, this is 3 days. And and like, oh, like, so it's a whole different mindset.
And the nearest hotel was like 45 minutes away.
Yeah. And I'm sure hotel is a word that you usually use for.
Yes, it was more like a motel. Yes, if you wanted a real hotel, that was at least an hour plus away. But I loved it though. It's like for about 30, 40 minutes, you have no connection to society at all. Like your phone does not work. And it's just cows and some cotton fields, corn, but I loved it. But I'm also from the country though. So
so I grew up in Miami, but my family's actually from Mississippi Delta. So my summers were spent, doing that, tilling the field, my grandfather shucking peas.
So you get it.
All that. So I get it. So I remember when cell phones first came out, we got to Mississippi, we're like, it doesn't work. They're like, my grandma's like, because there are no cell towers out here. We're like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean no cell towers? You're like, and it's still spotty now. But no, I'm with you. I'm a country boy at heart. So
yeah. But you have to keep all this stuff in mind when you're planning out your visits, right?
Yes, you do. And that's the thing. And the way you will show up to a site dressed in New York and the way you show up to a site dressed in Mississippi, it could be different. Yeah. I remember I was doing the sites in Alabama outside of the Montgomery area, And the PI actually came to me and asked me to stop wearing suits. He was like, shirt and slacks are fine. He was like, makes everyone completely uncomfortable when you so
That is so funny.
and I'm just like, wait, what? He was like, yeah. He's like, it's just we just don't wear suits like that in here, and like it completely like you stand out, makes everybody uncomfortable. Like, can you like adhere to like our dress down, like because he was wearing jeans and a polo shirt every day. Like that was his that's how he practiced. But it was a small rural practice in the middle of nowhere. And so like it made like, but that those type of things, those things you don't think about until you don't are different. And then like and then it comes to like site management. Like in New York, like the coordinators want to talk to you as little as possible. Like you need to be real quick and succinct to the point.
You have to force them to talk to you, basically.
Right. Like you need to have your list ready. Like if you're gonna call them, like you need to have like your entire list. You're not in the South, like, they're like, oh, you want to go get lunch? An hour later, like, oh, sure, let's get lunch. And then come back an hour later, like, I need to go back and monitor. I was like, I have work to do. So it's a whole different. It's like you have to adjust yourself based on where you are. You
really do. You really do. At least the good monitors do.
Yeah.
That's so funny. But then the good thing about what you said, going back to once Amgen had their, they were outsourcing everything, you were able to quickly find another job. And that's the beauty about this industry. And once you have that CRA role, you can pretty much go whenever, wherever, especially with the oncology experience.
Right. And even like 2006 with the recession and in 2010 or 12, there's always going to be clinical research going on. I don't want to say we're recession proof,
right?
But there's always jobs that are out there.
Even with COVID,
like there's still jobs, there's still studies, there's still hiring. And so like you kind of find yourself in a niche that, I mean, worst case scenario, once you have that base and things set up, like you can always fall back on a CRA career.
Yep.
Like if you haven't, and the job I got at UCB is because I knew someone at the company, because you end up, and that's another thing too, like being in different CROs in different places allows you to meet all the people within, and relatively small in general. And so I ended up, I knew somebody there when I was applying, and he was able to put in a good word for me as a reference. And so that helped me land that job. And that's someone I hadn't talked to that person in 7-8 years from when I first started at Quintiles. So like little things like that, you end up what will start happening if you are performing in the career where you're going to start cross paths with people that you've seen before. And so you want to make sure that you're not burning bridges. Like, if you get frustrated and things like that, you need to figure out like what your outlet is or what's your remedy path for those things, because the industry is very, very small. Right. And at some point you will cross back paths with someone that you met years ago, and then you'll start having these intersections and intersection points. But yeah, so I ended up being a project manager at UCB. I was doing an executive master's program at UNC, and so things were going well there. They acquired a company and decided that they were going to move their headquarters from Atlanta to Raleigh, which that's a funny story. They asked me, so this is in 2009, 10. So they asked me at that time, like, would I be willing to relocate to Raleigh? And I was like, no, I don't want to relocate to a small. I was like, I live in Atlanta. I was like, I'm not moving to Raleigh. So folks on the phone, I currently live in Raleigh. So back in 2010, I was not open to living in Raleigh. Fast forward 10 years, 11 years, I live in Raleigh now. So but back then I was like, we live in Atlanta, like Raleigh's a small town, like all these things. And so, so I didn't. So, but I ended up, so when you asked me if I transitioned back, I transitioned back into being a CRA, which wasn't, so this is probably about 2012, which wasn't my intent. But like I said before, there are always CRA jobs. And so and I had my consulting company. So I ended up becoming an independent contractor as a CRA for about another year and a half. And then I ended up getting a global trial manager position at Janssen. And so I took the role at Janssen, and but it was through an FSP model. So that means a functional service provider, which means I'm assigned to Janssen full time, but I'm being paid through a recruiting or consulting company.
Right.
And so yeah, I was there, and I came in. I was junior global project manager, working on the trials, getting all the data, working through all the different things, and so I was getting frustrated. And this again goes back to the comment I made before. You set the direction of where you want to go.
Yeah.
And so part of my and it all kind of worked in hand together, because part of my master's program was taking an advanced Excel class.
Oh, nice.
And so we're there, and so I get there, and I'm just fresh out of taking this class, and nobody in the clinical operations side on the project I'm working on knows how to use Excel. Like, I'm talking about some of the basic functions of Excel. So I'm leaving this advanced Excel class, and they're like, well, we need to track this and track that and do this and do this. And they're like, can anyone do this? And I was like, I'm there like a month. So like some people don't even know who I am or my name or anything. I was like, I can do that. So I'm sitting there, got the thing, got my cell book open on the side, and I'm making all these charts and doing all these different things. And then send it in. And they're like, oh man, they're like, this is a beautiful graph. And, and you're, like percentage on enrollment on this, like, we meet this metrics, then we'll exceed enrollment this month by this percentage and down, like all these things. And they're like, who's John? They're like, yeah, this guy we just hired. And so like now they're asking me to help them like model things out. And so like, I was like, sure. So I have my nice little Excel book, and I still haven't used it. And I'm looking at the things and trying to figure out the programs and for the cells and the formulas. And so it ended up where I moved quickly through, like, moving from being seen as like a junior, like John's doing the scut work, to like, they have me like managing like pivotal projects that are going to like the VPs of clinical research of the department. And so in the way it was set up was like, you had ClinOps and then you had clinical, and ClinOps was like the project manager and the operation of running the trials, and clinical was all the medical, like the clinical sciences and medical and things like that. And that was two very siloed things. But so ClinOps would produce things for clinical, and then clinical would have the discussion and come back to us and tell us what they needed.
Right.
But we never had meetings together. Like, it was two separate functions, two separate groups. They were very deliberate about not having really any crossover, because they're two different functional heads, everything. So they wanted to have these two independent groups. Well, I would send my stuff over to we send stuff up there, and a lot of stuff was like the Excels, different things I was doing. And they started asking me to attend the meeting so I could explain to them the models.
Wow.
and the data that was coming from them. And then they would come back to me, or the information wouldn't come back right, and we weren't giving them what they needed. And I'll tell them, I was like, listen, and I'll tell my manager, I was like, in email, you asked me to do this. And he's like, well, this is not what they're looking for. I was like, you asked me, this is exactly what you wrote in the email. So this is exactly what I did. Right. I was like, and then so we realized, like, if there are things that they wanted, like, I need to be sitting in the meetings, which ruffled a bunch of feathers of the people who were above me as project managers, because they were like, they never got to attend the meetings. So now, because of me, like, they're now getting to attend these meetings. And so you're sitting there, and so I was working 10 plus hours a day, all this extra time, and it was a lot. The study in the US was not, in the rest of the world it was fine. In the US it was not going well. There are a lot of decisions that were being made, like, that I didn't agree with, in terms of like recruitment and identifying investigators and just how to get the study back on track. And I was responsible for North America, so it was a lot of like stress and pressure. And it just got to the point where I was just like, this is just not. I was like, I need to make a change, because this is not working. So I called, now circle all the way back to the beginning. I called a friend. So when my mother started doing clinical trials at my dad's office, she basically got me and we're still friends today, and another study coordinator. Her name was Adina. Well, no, actually, I was in clinical trials, and I hired her to work as a study coordinator with me. So my mom was like, "You need to find someone else." Adina was just about to graduate from college, so we're only a couple years apart, and we worked there. I left to become a monitor. She finished college and worked there a couple more years, and our paths diverged. We kept in touch because the familial connection. So I'm completely frustrated. I'm like, I need to make a change. So I end up, mind you, I hired her for her first job in the industry. I call her. I was like, "Hey, saw on LinkedIn, just joined this biotech. Do y'all need any CRA help?" Again, I was going to leave project management and go back to CRA because like I need an out and because you have it there. So I reached out to her and I was like, "Hey," I was like, "What are you guys working on? Like, do y'all need any help?" She's like, "Actually, you called at a perfect time. We need a project manager.
Oh,
Do you
wow.
want to come on board for us?" Because she was director of clinical operation at the time. And she hired, and so I was like, "Yes, absolutely." Absolutely. So I end up going to work for that company because keeping relationship intact, understanding how the industry goes, you end up crossing paths with people again.
Right.
And this is a relationship that I maintained for 15 plus years. And in my time of, I need to be out of this company, I will take a step back in order to leave because I maintain that relationship. A phone call 2 days later, I'm talking to the CMO and he's like, if Adina loves you, you're good with me. When can you start?
Wow.
And so like, that's why the relationship piece are important. And then from there, and so I was there, I was at the company, so I was there for 5 years. Adina left after 2. And so I ended up assuming Adina's role. And so that again, that relationship actually is what catapulted me into becoming a VP. Because since she left, I assumed her role. So I took over all her responsibilities. Then the CMO ended up leaving. And so they made me head of clinical operations. And over that span of 5 years and running that trial, and that buoyed me into being able to take the position I have now. So a lot of it is, but a lot of it was being prepared. Every step prepared me for the next one.
Right.
And asking the questions that needed to be asked, be able to, because I got my master's in 2012. It's, almost 10 years later before I'm in the executive role that I need my master's for. But it's about the preparation to be able to get to where you want to get to.
Right.
And so like
something as small as the Excel course, that was like, at least from what I'm hearing, that was like a game changer too.
It was. And so like and the thing is, a lot of times you don't know when or why, or like, do I need to do this or what's going to happen? And you never know like when you need to reach in that bag of tricks. And that was it. And to me, like, and we weren't doing like advanced Excel functions. A lot of it was just manipulating an Excel chart. And it got me exposed because I could do it. And then now I'm meeting with like the statistics and data team in terms of how they're modeling recruitment. And we're comparing like this Excel model with some of these high-end recruitment programs that they can punch in all this data and come out, and things are matching up and things like, so we're having different conversations that you wouldn't have as just a general project manager or as a CRA, because you're continuing to learn outside of your space. And that's where it becomes important, because like I'm one of the project managers that I was working in the previous company. I'm still mentoring her now. And she wants to become a director. And I was like, are you working with budgets? Like, have you started to look at and understand how to put a budget together, how to calculate what monthly look like, to know what the actual budget is versus the projected budget? And then if there's a difference, why is there a difference in those things? And I was like, that's the difference from moving from a senior project manager to a director. Is a lot of times the functions ends up being the same because it all builds upon the next thing. But that build is, you're going to be responsible for a budget. And you need to be able to go to the VP or go to the so-and-so and say like, and review the entire study budget with them to be able to know like, these are the steps. So it's understanding like, what are the incremental increases from one level to the next? And then are you prepared for that increase? Like if you're not a budget number person, but you want to be an executive, you need to be a budget number person. Like I know like half of my week is dealing with the budget. And so like if you want to get there, like there may be other paths and other, different ways, but dealing with the numbers as you verse into the executive role, like that's going to be critical, because I get calls every other day asking me about the budget. And it's not, I can't fumble around and try to find it. Like I almost keep it open on my computer all the time, because at any point someone's going to call me and ask about the study budget. And again, we're doing four studies. So I need to have all four, like the numbers are all four plus department, plus know what they're doing in another department and how that's going to impact my budget here and over here. So as you're looking at where you want to go, you need to understand like what are the key difference in the role of going from a project manager to a director, and then from a director to like a VP. Like what is it that are these tangible things, and start learning and getting exposure to those skill sets while you're in that role. Because again, it goes to where you want to go. So like I said earlier, if I'm, when I talk to people I hire, talk to people that I manage, I ask them like, what is it do you want to do? Where do you want to get to? And I will find ways to expose you to that now. That way, once you get to the opportunity presents itself, right. And you're not coming in from a lack of like, I need to figure this out. Like at least you've been exposed to it over the course of time. And so like, yeah. And I think that's why people are, I've seen success for people who I've managed, and for some people that works, some people it doesn't. But for me, it would be hard for me to work with people who don't necessarily tell me like, hey, I want to do X. Like if you want to be a CRA and that's all you want to do, like cool, I'll hire for a CRA and that's it. But it's going to be hard for me to invest a lot of time because you don't want, because that's kind of where you want to go. Right. And so it's in the organizations, like you're looking for trying to find driven and dynamic people, because like, I want you to come take my job. We were sitting in a meeting and, I've had conversations with my CEO about, hey, I want to be a CEO. Can I sit on business development meetings? Can I do these things? Like, and they're open to that. And so like, it's not threatening to them. A lot of times it doesn't end up being threatening to the person you're asking. A lot of times people want that too, because, like, okay, we have a driven organization. Me being driven to become a C-level executive is only going to benefit the company. Right. Because I am going to be trying to perfect my craft. And so, but you have to do it where it's not disruptive. I mean, you have to be patient and there are different things, but the drive aspect to it should not be seen as a deterrent. And you need to ask the questions of how to get to where you want to get to. And then if you can't, and then if they're not answering the questions, you need to find somebody that has an answer to that question.
Wow. So a lot of things that you said, I really incorporate in my coaching program, and I really try to reiterate to my coaching clients. Networking is key. Creating, establishing those relationships, and then nurturing them, building them. Don't burn bridges. And then really having a strategy like you did. Not being afraid to share your plans, your future plans with your manager or director, whoever your, direct line of contact is. Not being afraid to share those ambitions. This is why you're so awesome and so successful, right?
And a lot of it is, is prayer, it's Lord, it's a lot of things, but it's knowing it's a balance between being humble and confident. Like right. You have to be, humble enough to say like, I need help. Right. And I often tell people, and I know a lot of times, especially in our society where we see asking for help, maybe even as a weakness, or that you're not getting it and you're not going to be successful. Right. One thing that that I tell a lot of people that work for me. I was like, please come to me when there's a problem, because once it becomes an issue, it's harder for me to help you.
Right.
Because issues involve a lot of people. Like a problem, like, hey, like I'm having a problem. Like, okay, let's knock this problem out. Like once it becomes an issue, that means regulatory may be involved, QA may be involved, my boss may be involved. Like you're now getting eyeballs that you may not want. But and it makes it harder for me to help and protect you, because it's now out of my hands to be able to deal with. If you're having a problem or you need help, like your manager and the people above you are supposed to be there to help you navigate through these problems. But if you let it fester and it becomes a bigger issue, then your exposure to what could have been a really solvable problem is a lot more. And so that's where I think we don't necessarily either fear or don't humble ourselves to be able to say, like, I need to ask for help. And so, like, I have a very, very open door policy. Like, hit me on Messenger, text me, call me, and let's talk through this together. And then, because there are things that I may experience, things we can collaborate together on and come up with a solution before it gets out of hand. Because also, from something that people don't necessarily see from a management perspective, is each thing is a piece into a larger picture.
Yep.
And so if a piece is out of place, then the larger thing may not work.
Right.
And so if you tell me something, because a lot of times is we try to put Band-Aid fixes on things that will end up rupturing and cracking and breaking the whole foundation apart. If we're not looking, what does this look like 3 months, 6 months, a year from now,
right,
if we put a Band-Aid on this? Or do we just need to fix the entire problem? And then for me, identifying something that's going to be catastrophic 12 months from now today, and you told me about today, that's all kudos to you, because you saved me time and money and effort and manpower 12 months from now. And so a lot of times we think that if I bring this problem up, it may be something. But for me, I always look at everything like, will this fix work in X period of time, or are we going to be revisiting this?
right.
Now, sometimes you can try to figure out, like, sometimes it needs to be a Band-Aid fix, because fixing the whole system may take too long, and
Right.
there's an immediate need for it. But
Right.
at least I know, like, I need to be thinking about, like, when this comes up as a bigger issue, like, how am I going to deal with this at this point? And it may just be because of whatever the needs are. I need to fix this now. But identifying that and being willing to share that is good. And then, because a lot of times what people do and how other parts interface with the other pieces, they don't always think about, like, how does this impact the overall bigger picture?
Right.
And so from the director, VP level, executive levels, like, we're always looking at the big picture. Like, I'm not thinking of, like, I'm thinking about June right now. Like, to me, my project managers, my team are figuring out the upcoming months. Like, we set the plan for the upcoming months so that we're executing the plan for the next few months. I'm thinking about the next quarter and what needs to happen, 1 to 2 quarters from now, and where do we need to be?
Right.
Are we on track? And if we're not on track, like, what needs to happen? But, every piece plays into that. So if there's something now that's going to impact me 2 or 3 quarters from now, like, I need to know, I'd rather know it now and try to fix it than, later, where things may come down to a halt, because there's a lot of machinery in this, but small things can really, really start happening and slow clinical trials down.
Yep. You're so right. So what would you say would be, I guess, kind of the take home point that you would want to share to aspiring CRAs that are maybe looking to build a career, lifelong career as a CRA, or even those that have aspirations similar to yours and they want to go on to director and VP, the C-suite
Sure.
roles? What would you say would be that one piece of advice you would want to leave everyone with?
I will start with make a plan, but don't be afraid to change the plan.
Okay.
And your plan needs to have flexibility for variables outside of your control. And then if things start to accelerate in your career, sometimes you need to make the decision on, am I going to be successful if I move this quickly? Because I think, a lot of times if we pass up on opportunities, because there are opportunities I've passed up on, even take the role that I have now. So I had 2 VP offers. One, I could have gone in and created an entire department, entire program. There was limited human resources. Like, I need to hire everybody. I need to basically recreate the entire thing. And in my mind, I was like, that would be cool. Mm-hmm. That would be awesome. Like, I can go in, it can be all my own. I can build it up from scratch. It'll be my models, my methodology, my everything. And then there was my current role, which a lot of, it was still building a lot, but there were good bones and groundwork and pieces that were talented people already around that I would be able to manage and do different things. And I had to sit back and this, really make a decision on what my family life balance was going to look like. What was my level of success going to be to build? Do I know enough? Am I ready to build an entire department from scratch? Like, all the pieces. And taking a self-evaluation of myself, I realized that I wasn't up for that challenge at that moment in time. There will be a time that I'm ready for that. But at that moment, I knew, I was like, this is going to be more than I can handle. Right. And I don't know if I would have had the right support systems in place to help me traverse those things. The upper management, they had a lot of the C-level, they had a lot of different ideas of where the direction of where the company could go. So, like, conflicting messaging on how things. So, yes, could I have figured it out and been successful and worked through it? And do I believe I could have? Yes. But do I believe at that moment in time, was I in the mental place to go take that task on? No. And so that's the thing. Like, you need to evaluate everything based on where you are, where you want to be, and be okay with saying no to some things. Like, yes, you can go drive, maybe make some more money going somewhere, but is where you're going a worse situation than you are now? And because, no one can pay for peace of mind.
Right.
And so that's kind of where you go. So if another thing too is whatever you're going to do, work to be great at it. So I'm a big advocate of training. So if you join ACRP and become certified and do those things, if you want to become a healthcare executive, there's a National Association of Healthcare Executives. Join that. Join the American Association of Healthcare Executives. So you're in the space where people are you're learning, and you're in the space of people doing the things that it is you want to do. Right. And then by surrounding yourselves around that, you're picking up lingo. You're seeing the latest thinking. There's a big push right now in the industry to be a lot more tech coming in, healthcare tech coming into the industry. So are you following healthcare tech companies on LinkedIn and looking at people's bios and understand how different things may impact different stuff? And to be successful in either arena and to bring more value to both companies as a CRA, and if you want to move into there, recruitment is king. And if you understand and you learn different recruitment models, you read articles and understand solutions to help with recruitment or understand some of the dynamics of how therapeutic areas recruit or different things like that, and you've been successful in recruiting in both paths. As a CRA, I'm working because there's a lot of site management, a lot of talking with your sites in terms of helping them identify patients to get onto the trials. And then on the director and executive trial, like your trial success is based on how quickly you can recruit. Recruitment to me is money. The faster I recruit, the more money I save. Mm-hmm. If you want to find a niche in information and things that you can hone in on and bring immediate value to whatever organization you're at, understanding recruitment dynamics is masterful. And there's a lot of stuff that's out there for that. And then just being proficient in what you are. Be up on the latest training, get your GCP training. We do that every single year. I'm a big proponent of that. And to the point where the entire company, doesn't matter your department, everyone's going to get it. Because being up on the standards, knowing those things are all key things that people are going to look at. Because if I'm hiring you, I'm expecting you to be good at your job. So if you say you're a CRA and you've been a CRA for 10 years, I believe you. You must have been successful because you got this long and this far. The question is going to be, what are those other things that are going to make you appear different from everybody else? What can you say to me in an interview that's going to have me sit back and be like, I can use that. I can use the CRA and good CRA skill sets, but if you're proficient in something else, if you learn a different skill set that you feel can translate to making you a better candidate and a better fit and a better understanding of what things you do, that's important. And so you want to be well-rounded and proficient in your area of expertise, but what are those other things that make you look differently, like an Excel class? What are those other things that make you function and look different from some of the other things that from another candidate in the similar role?
Thank you for sharing. Any last words that you want to share before?
No, thank you. And I appreciate it. You have me thinking on things I haven't thought about in a long time. And, find me on LinkedIn. I'm, accessible. I'm not one of the people. If you message me, I read all my messages. So if you have questions, or just let me know. Jasmine, I'll be more than delighted if you guys have a Q&A or something, the roundtable, to come back again. There are careers and there are opportunities here, and don't be shy and not ask for what it is you want. And whatever path you decide to go down, there's huge success that can be measured in any direction you go. The main thing is, like I said, we can get into the social dynamics of a lot of things that we look at, but you want to be the best, and you want to push yourself to be the best. And if you finding yourselves in spaces where you're struggling, there are a lot of people that are willing to help. Yep. And Jasmine is doing this out of her time and kindness of her heart, but she's willing to help. I'm an available resource. Like I said, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Thank you.